Have you ever stopped to think about the value that wisdom brings to a marriage? In Proverbs 19:14, the Bible says, "Houses and wealth are inherited from parents, but a prudent wife is from the Lord." Reflect on that for a moment. While material possessions can be passed down from generation to generation, true prudence is something that God gives personally. What kind of gift does that represent? Now imagine a woman who, in all her decisions, acts with wisdom, carefully considering, reflecting, and always seeking the best for her family. How would that transform the atmosphere of the home? How would that prudence shape not only the relationship, but also the life journey of everyone around her? Perhaps you know someone like that. Perhaps you are that person or aspire to be. Or maybe you're asking yourself, have I been prudent in my choices? Have I been this gift that God intended for my family? It's at this point that we begin to realize that feminine wisdom is more than a personality trait. It's a true divine blessing. Now imagine what happens when that prudence is missing. What is the impact on the marriage, on the day-to-day decisions, on the difficulties that arise? Without this wisdom, what could happen when crises emerge and challenges pile up? When we talk about wisdom in marriage, we are not referring to something merely theoretical or distant. We are speaking of something deeply human, real, revealed in the smallest day-to-day choices. The prudent wife is described as a gift from God, but how does that truly manifest amid the difficulties of daily life? How can this wisdom sustain a marriage, especially when the winds of life blow stronger? Think of moments of tension, those days when exhaustion builds up, problems seem endless, and everything inside you wants to react impulsively. It is in those times that a woman's wisdom makes all the difference. The prudent wife is not one who never gets shaken, but one who, even in the storms, finds a way to maintain balance. She chooses her words carefully, acts with patience, and above all, strives to be a point of stability for her family. Now, look at your own relationship. How many times in difficult moments has one word of yours completely changed the course of a discussion? Or perhaps in a complicated situation, a simple decision of yours brought peace where there was chaos. This is the practical wisdom of a woman, not a distant gift, but something present in every small choice, every gesture of understanding, every act of care. And it's not just about avoiding conflict. Wisdom also knows when to speak and when to listen, to see beyond appearances and understand what your spouse truly needs. In your marriage, have you been using this capacity? Have you noticed the signs your husband gives when something isn't right? Have you fulfilled this role of sustaining the relationship even when everything seems to be falling apart? The truth is, marriage is a field where wisdom is constantly tested. There is no fixed manual, but there are daily opportunities to exercise it. The prudent woman understands that every decision she makes, from her tone of voice to how she resolves a problem, can determine the direction of the relationship. The question is, how have you been using this wisdom? Are there areas in your marriage where you can act more intentionally, more lovingly, more wisely? The role of a woman in a relationship goes far beyond what we often perceive at first glance. There is a quiet strength, a natural ability that women possess to protect, to keep the focus on what truly matters. And this strength may very well be what sustains a marriage during its most difficult moments. Have you noticed this in your own relationship? Those moments when things seem to spiral out of control, and somehow you feel that you need to be the pillar of stability. It's no coincidence that a woman in her wisdom can foresee what's to come and prepare the ground to face challenges. While men are often more impulsive or distracted, the wise woman is able to maintain focus, remember what truly matters, and guide the relationship back to balance. But how does this work in practice? Think of the times when your spouse, lost in work worries or day-to-day challenges, seemed to stray from what's most important. How many times, with a look or a word, have you been able to bring him back, reminding him of what truly counts? It's this ability to keep a clear vision that makes a woman the true guardian of marriage. Now reflect. Have you been playing this role consciously? Have you been that emotional anchor, not only balancing but also inspiring your husband to be the best version of himself? And more importantly, how has this wisdom impacted his life? Perhaps you've already seen it in action, or maybe you're still discovering how this strength can be used more fully. But here's a truth we often forget. This responsibility can also be exhausting. A woman, by her very nature, carries a significant emotional weight while trying to keep everything in place. Do you feel this? Do you sometimes feel that this role of guardian becomes too heavy? Recognizing your own limits is also wisdom, and sharing this burden with God can further strengthen your ability to maintain focus and harmony within the home. There's an interesting perception that arises when we look at the behavior of men, especially in the context of a relationship. Curiously, men often have a natural tendency toward self-destruction. Of course, this doesn't mean they seek chaos on purpose, but they are driven by their own distractions, impulses, or external pressures. And this is precisely where a woman's wisdom comes into play. How many times have you found yourself in a situation where you had to save your husband from an impulsive choice, or even help him avoid consequences he hadn't considered? It almost feels like a superpower, doesn't it? Women have this innate ability to see what could go wrong, to anticipate the obstacles that men often overlook. But this isn't just about preventing mistakes. It's about being a constant support, a partner who understands weaknesses and, instead of judging, helps to redirect. Have you noticed how this wisdom has been essential in key moments of your relationship? Perhaps you prevented a bad financial decision from sinking the family, or maybe you helped maintain focus on a project that seemed on the verge of collapse. On the other hand, this responsibility can be challenging. How do you balance the act of protecting and advising without it being seen as control? How can you use this wisdom to guide without overstepping the other's space? This is an art that many women intuitively master, but it sometimes also requires patience, sensitivity, and a great deal of prayer. After all, men often find themselves under pressure from both external and internal expectations. They are expected to be the provider, the strong one, the invincible. But within every man, there is also a vulnerability that he may not always know how to express. And it is here that a woman with her sensitivity and discernment can be the point of balance, helping to channel that strength in a healthy and constructive way. Do you feel that you have been this strength in your relationship? Have you been able to recognize those moments when your husband needs redirection, a word of wisdom? Or perhaps you've experienced times when you struggled to find that balance. All of this is part of the process of growing together. Keeping focus in a marriage is a constant task. And what does this focus mean? It's the ability not to get lost in the distractions of everyday life and always remember the priorities: the relationship, health, finances, and above all, the connection between the two. But with so many external challenges, work, children, responsibilities, how can you keep the marriage at the center of everything? Think about the last time you and your spouse sat down to talk about future plans, or simply reflect on the direction you're headed. Is the marriage receiving the time and dedication it needs to flourish? And more, are both of you working together to keep this focus? Success in marriage doesn't happen by chance. It is the result of joint effort, of two people who decide every day to invest in the relationship. This includes caring for one another emotionally, paying attention to signs of fatigue or discontent, and making choices that lead to growth. And this is something that must be done in partnership. But here's an important question. Are you both on the same wavelength? Often, success in marriage depends on aligning visions for the future and expectations. This means talking openly about the challenges that arise, the desires and the goals. When you, as a couple, manage to keep focus in these areas, love, health, finances, and spiritual growth, the relationship becomes stronger. However, it's natural that the distractions of life sometimes pull the couple away from this focus. Have you felt this? Work demands too much, children take up all the time, and before you know it, the marriage takes a back seat. How can this be avoided? The secret may lie in the wisdom to recognize the signs and intentionally bring the relationship back to the center. Have you both been able to maintain this focus on the marriage? What areas need more attention or adjustments? Perhaps it's time to realign your purposes, reassess priorities, and together return to building a life where both feel truly connected and ready to face challenges as a team. Have you ever stopped to think about the impact that victories have within a marriage? When one spouse achieves something important, whether at work or in any other area of life, that moment needs to be shared. And it's not just about saying congratulations. It's about involving the other in the celebration, in the emotion of success. When victories aren't shared, it can create a distance that often goes unnoticed until it's too late. Think for a moment. How many times have you felt left out of a victory that could have been celebrated together? Or how many times have you or your spouse not shared an accomplishment, thinking it wasn't significant enough? These small omissions can leave deep marks, creating a space for resentment that quietly builds over time. The biblical story of David and Michal is a clear example of this. Michal, David's wife, was excluded from one of his great victories, and this led to wounds that deeply affected their relationship. When a couple doesn't share their joys and successes, something is lost along the way. That connection, which should be strengthened with every success, ends up weakening. Now look at your own relationship. Do you both celebrate victories together? Not just the big ones, but also the small wins of everyday life? Perhaps it's a promotion at work, overcoming a personal challenge, or even something as simple as solving a long-standing problem. Each of these moments can be an opportunity to strengthen your bond and recognize each other's efforts. More importantly, celebrating together creates a space for shared joy, where both feel valued and connected. Don't let the pressures of daily life overshadow the importance of sharing these moments. Life as a couple is made not only of challenges but also of triumphs that, when celebrated together, bring new energy to the marriage. Are you both sharing these moments as you should? Perhaps now is the time to pay more attention to the small victories that happen every day and ensure that they are celebrated as a couple. What more can be done to ensure that in marriage, every victory is seen as a step together toward an even stronger and united future? The midlife crisis is something many men face, especially when they reach their 40s or 50s. It's a period of questioning, where they are confronted with doubts about their own life, career, and even the future. These crises can be especially challenging for marriage, as men often feel an internal pressure to make changes, which may not always be well thought out or healthy. Have you seen this happen? Perhaps you are going through it now, or you've noticed signs in your spouse. It's common during these phases for many men to make impulsive decisions that can profoundly affect the relationship. This is when a woman's prudence becomes essential. Her ability to see things more clearly, to reflect before acting, can be what keeps the marriage stable during these turbulent times. Think about how many times your husband has brought up ideas that seem to come out of nowhere, changing careers, making a big move, or taking risky financial decisions. These ideas aren't always bad, but the lack of reflection can be dangerous. And this is where feminine wisdom comes into play. How have you been helping to bring calm and discernment in these moments of crisis? How have you exercised patience and at the same time encouraged dialogue to ensure that decisions are made thoughtfully? On the other hand, it's also important to recognize that the midlife crisis is not just a time of risk, but also one of transformation. Many men, as they go through these crises, begin to reinvent themselves. They may discover new passions, new paths, and even find a new way to view the world and their marriage. Your wisdom, therefore, is not just about preventing mistakes, but also about guiding your husband toward a new phase of growth. But for this to happen, open dialogue must always be present. The question is, have you both been talking openly about these changes? Perhaps your spouse is going through something like this, and you haven't fully noticed yet. Or if you have, how have you helped channel this crisis into something positive? This phase of life, when lived with wisdom and patience, can be an opportunity for growth for both the man and the marriage. What could be done so that together you can navigate this crisis and come out even stronger on the other side? There is a truth we often forget amidst life's responsibilities. One day, the children will go on to live their own lives, but the relationship between husband and wife needs to remain strong and healthy. And this is a truth that, when ignored, can cause great damage to the marriage. When children are born, it's natural for much of the attention to shift toward them. The routine changes, the focus changes, and without realizing it, the couple begins to drift apart. But as the children grow and become more independent, that distance becomes more apparent. Have you stopped to think about how your relationship with your husband is when the focus is not on the children? Over time, children follow their own paths, and it's in those moments that many couples realize that the relationship has been neglected for years. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to prioritize the marriage, even with all the family demands. But how can you do this when so many things require your time and energy? Perhaps now is the time to reflect. How have you been investing in your relationship with your spouse? When was the last time you dedicated time just for the two of you, without external worries, without talking about the children or work? To keep the marriage strong, it's essential to cultivate moments of connection, whether through a simple conversation, a date night, or even small gestures of affection in daily life. Here are some practical ways to prioritize your marriage, even with the demands of family life. Create a date night routine. Whether it's once a week or once a month, set aside time to be together, just as a couple, without distractions. Daily moments of conversation. Even if it's just 10 minutes at the end of the day, take time to talk about how your day went, what you're feeling, and how you're feeling in the relationship. Surprise each other. Small gestures of affection, like an unexpected note, cooking the other's favorite meal, or organizing a surprise, are ways to keep the spark alive and show that the marriage is a priority. Plan the future together. Instead of focusing solely on the challenges of the day-to-day, talk about your dreams for the future as a couple. What do you want to do together when the children have their own lives? What adventures do you still want to experience together? Take on challenges together. Tackle projects as a team, whether it's something practical like renovating a room or learning something new. This can create new memories and keep you connected. When a couple prioritizes the relationship, it becomes the solid foundation for facing life's challenges. And when the children finally leave home, instead of feeling an empty space, you'll be able to enjoy a new chapter filled with companionship and mutual growth. Is your marriage receiving the attention it deserves? What more can be done to strengthen this bond before the children begin their own journeys? Perhaps now is the time to take action. Since the beginning of time, man was created with a clear purpose, to protect and provide. This is a responsibility that many men carry, even if they don't always express it in words. In marriage, this role is essential but cannot be fulfilled in isolation. The wisdom of a woman is what helps a man balance these roles, especially when challenges arise. Have you noticed how in daily life this role of protection and provision shows up in your relationship? Perhaps it's when your husband works hard to ensure the family's financial security, or when he makes decisions aimed at protecting the family from future problems. But at the same time, he also relies on feminine prudence to manage the home, make wise decisions, and help maintain peace and harmony. The role of the woman here is much more than just taking care of the house. As it is written in Proverbs 14:1, "The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down." It is often the woman who balances emotions, handles difficult decisions, and through her prudence guides the marriage during uncertain times. How many times in challenging situations has your wisdom helped find a solution? How many times have you been able to see beyond the surface and understand what was best for the family? Prudence is to a woman what protection and provision are to a man. When a couple is in sync and focused on the same goals, the relationship flourishes. There are no distractions, and this common focus brings happiness to both. It's at this moment that a woman begins to soar, reaching new levels of harmony and growth within the relationship. But what is prudence? It's the ability to calculate the impact of a decision. It means not reacting impulsively, not raising your voice in a moment of frustration. Remember, emotions are fleeting, but decisions can have lasting effects. How many times has a decision made in the heat of a passing emotion left deep marks? Prudence guides you to lead your marriage with wisdom. Be mindful of your tone of voice, because the home should be a place of peace and harmony, a place where your husband will always want to be. If at any point you feel that wisdom or prudence is lacking, remember that God is always ready to give these gifts. The Bible reminds us in James 1:5, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him." God is the source of all wisdom, and when we seek His guidance in prayer, He directs us in every decision. Additionally, Proverbs 8:12 speaks of wisdom, saying, "I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion." Prudence and wisdom go hand in hand, and by seeking them from God, you will be equipped to handle the challenges of marriage with strength and balance. There will be moments when you are right, but prudence may lead you to remain silent in that moment, knowing the issue can be resolved later, with more calmness. Nothing provokes the enemy's fury more than a balanced and happy family. Therefore, focus on who will be with you forever. Children grow up and leave, friends go their separate ways, but your marriage is the relationship that must be prioritized. The Bible directs us on where our focus should be. Pray together, walk together, and watch how God will strengthen your union. Prayer has a transformative power within marriage. Through it, the couple connects not only with each other but also with God, allowing His blessings to flow over the relationship. Praying together strengthens the spiritual bond and creates a solid foundation to face life's challenges. Have you experienced the power of prayer in your marriage? When husband and wife unite to seek God, something profound happens. Fears and insecurities are surrendered to Him, and the couple aligns with God's purposes. In times of crisis, when strength seems depleted, prayer renews and gives clarity to move forward. Imagine for a moment, you both kneel together, offering your worries, your plans, and even the simplest decisions into God's hands. How could this change the dynamics of your relationship? What once seemed like an insurmountable problem becomes small in the presence of God's power when He is placed at the center of your marriage. But praying together is also a form of communion. When you pray together, you share concerns, dreams, and deepest desires, creating a space of vulnerability and trust. Praying together is more than asking for blessings. It's a way to build spiritual intimacy, to recognize that you are one flesh before God, and to commit to seeking His will together. Have you been setting aside time to pray together regularly? If not, perhaps now is the time to start. It can be in the morning before the day begins, or at night before bed. It can be a brief prayer or a deeper conversation with God. The important thing is that by praying together, you strengthen not only your marital relationship, but also the faith that sustains your union. Remember, a marriage grounded in prayer is a fortress against life's difficulties. When husband and wife walk together before God, nothing can shake that union, for it is built upon a firm and unshakable foundation.